Hello TikTok, I am Gen X Mystic, and I thought I'd drop another few thoughts of mine down, which I would intend to make only 3 minutes, but end up probably chatting for much longer. And today I'd like to talk about an aspect of the awakening, which can be a way of dealing with an aspect of the awakening, which is to do with the internal turbulence that one goes through as one goes down various rabbit holes trying to figure out what's going on in this world. And that can be quite a disturbing, disconcerting, alienating, painful experience for people. So for the number of Gen Xers who've probably already done that, this video might be quite boring for you or might not be that interesting. So go to the comments and feel free to leave your year and where you are and all the Gen X things. So anybody who isn't following you can follow you and follow you back. And obviously give me a like if you like, and give me a follow. That would be lovely, but not necessary. I'm here to just talk about this particular aspect of the awakening and how to deal with it. And so with regards to this difficulty that we have, that we can really lose sleep sometimes, we can feel really excited or terrified or overwhelmed, depressed, when we're falling it down these rabbit holes, these red-pilled rabbit holes of confusion and concern and anger, sometimes a sense of betrayal, disillusionment, some quite difficult emotions and psychological states to navigate while we're waking up. And I have this one concept that I think is very useful for those of us who are maybe a little bit more neurological, who maybe sort of live in our thoughts a little bit more. This concept I think is quite good for that. That's not to say that a practice of meditation or just walking in the forest, doing things with nature, your animals, your pets, things you love, art, is always, an excellent way of reconnecting yourself and grounding yourself. But this little thought experiment, I think, is quite useful. Always helps me, and has helped me in the past when I sort of realized it, to just get some sort of perspective on what's going on and why things are happening the way they are. And so the concept I have to offer you is I call the time of day concept. And so every time of day has a quality to it. You've got morning, you've got afternoon, you've got evening, and there are sort of certain kinds of qualities to each of those parts of the day that you can tune into. You know that in the late evening you might feel a bit tired. In the afternoon you might feel energized. It might have to do with the weather at the time, but there are certain qualities at the time of day. Now, if we start thinking about that cycle, that sort of moves into our lifetimes. Sometimes when we're born, we don't know what's going on. There's lots of confusion. It can be quite frustrating. We can cry and can't feed ourselves, and then sort of we become adults and so on. And then we become old and more decrepit, and we can't move around so well. So there are qualities within a lifetime that we can recognize. So with this time of day thing, I want to crunch out just a little bit further with this concept and start looking at, if we crunch out all the way out, we can sort of say, well, every species sort of comes into existence and eventually will become extinct or be maybe superseded or hybridized by some other species. So within that context, we have human cultures, human civilizations, and within that there's history, there's tribal warfare, there's interbreeding between different types of humans perhaps, or types of cultures, and there's trade and religion and avatars, spiritual leaders, politicians, warmongers, all the rest of it. And every culture will have its time of day. When a culture begins, it might start as a little proto-culture, a small group of people who have to work really hard against the elements or the environment to sort of really help themselves survive and prosper. And if they do well at it, then they produce more generations, and the structure of that original proto-culture will kind of move forwards in spirits with every subsequent generation. And when it comes to civilizations, again, there's going to be certain qualities at the beginning that are going to really fuel the success of that civilization, and then there'll be maybe a peak, and then maybe at times there will be a sort of the civilization will have a little fall, or a bigger fall, or some other new civilization might start moving in, and there might be war and conflict, there might be desperation, there might be a sense of futility at times. So where are we is the question with regards to my concept of the time of day. And when we look at the world around us, especially when we're waking up, when we're seeing the corruption, when we're seeing how the dots don't add up, and how the dots do add up in a completely different fashion from the way we've been told. And we ask ourselves, why are things falling apart? I can see things are falling apart. Why can't I communicate this to many of the people I might have grown up with or might be around me? Why are our leaders so useless? Why are those people in authority seeming to be the opposite of what authority should represent? Why are words even being reversed in their meaning to the point that we can't even understand each other anymore? This is like a kind of a hell. And that experience can, when you sort of start to sort of have to confront it, can be really quite overwhelming. And it's part of a natural process of the awakening to feel that disillusionment, that confusion, that cognitive dissonance. And so recognizing the time of day is really important, because you wouldn't expect necessarily the quality of this kind of despair at the beginning of a civilization. And you wouldn't expect it maybe at the peak where it's just really free-flowing, where maybe it doesn't need to write anything down because the civilization is having such a great time, But you would expect this kind of quality of disillusionment at the end of an epoch, at the end of a civilization. And that doesn't mean to say that it's the end of the world, unless you define the world purely within the brackets of the civilization that you've come into. So there has been indications, if we look through our collective history, particularly if we look down the spiritual roots, people who've reflected on these things in the past, where these things have been predicted, and they've been predicted quite accurately, and they've been pointed to in things like the Mayan calendar and the Indian yugas, where they talk about the Kali Yuga, and in even Judeo-Christian aspects, like in Revelations and so on. And the reason why there's this eerie accuracy to some of these words that were written thousands of years ago, some might argue even tens of thousands of years ago, if we're looking at sort of like the Vedas and what have you, is not because they're necessarily prophetic. You can interpret it that way, but it's because those who were able to make these observations ahead of time were tapping into an understanding of the time of day, and they could see that things moved in cycles. And they, one of the things that you have to accept is that not only do things come into being with a time of day, but things come to an end. And you don't need to be a religious, spiritual nutcase or whatever to appreciate that temporal quality, that temporary quality to reality. You only need to see that things eventually fall apart, whether it's our bodies, even whether it's our senses of self, or whether it's the changing seasons, or the way a river over the course of hundreds of years might slowly change its course, or indeed a mountain might eventually crumble into dust. So this entropy, which is inseparable from the nature of reality, is ingrained in us, and in order for us to appreciate the time of day, we have to integrate this sense of entropy. We have to integrate an appreciation of this sense of entropy. So, just like words themselves change meaning or cease to have the meaning that they once had, we can see the entropy also playing out through that. And indeed, the culture and the civilization that we're in, if we think about the beginning of that culture, which had those original ideas, those original bonds that were formed by that smaller population, those philosophies which glued them together, which informed future generations to follow. Eventually, as the generations go on, the entropy starts to eat away at almost the collective memory of the ability for us to appreciate and understand what drove our ancestors first and foremost. The further we get away from the time that they first arrived and began that civilization. So when you sort of start to take all of this on board, you can start to see that the structures of authority, the people who are in positions of power, and the threads of those who've been in positions of power for the longest time, they will actually have a sense that things are coming to an end. And what they'll want to do, of course, is, like anybody, avoid any discomfort. And they will use their knowledge and their wisdom to hold on to their power and to maintain their control and to maintain their comfort. And that is at the mercy of everybody else who agrees to go along with them. So I will end on this note that appreciate the time of day, that we are at the end of a cycle, that it is only our participation with those who are in power that allow them to stay in power. And in a sense, our participation with them isn't doing them any good, because they themselves, as consciousness, need to move forwards. So we're in a slightly toxic and unhealthy, codependent relationship with them. But what we interpret as, say, incompetence may well be the case at times, but you can be damn sure that some of the incompetence is so eerie it can't be anything other than quite deliberate, and it's not incompetence at all. It's the reflection of people who are in power, who know their time is coming to an end, and they are so desperate to maintain their comfort and their control to do their damnedest. They know they can get away with literally getting people to think that they're incompetent. Just act stupid and nobody will know any different. So that is really one of the ways of understanding why things are falling apart. They're falling apart because they're supposed to, and they're falling apart because that is the nature of the time of day. Anyway, I could go on, and I've already hit 15 minutes. So anybody that's managed to stay listening this long, I don't know who you are, but credit to you, and thank you so much for listening. This is a message of hope, and also this is a message to not give up, not go so black-pilled that you miss that larger context. I'm not sort of having a casting shade on the black pill perspective, because I think it's really powerful too. As I say, we've got to keep in touch with our entropy, and always keep in mind the story of the tortoise and the hare, which I may well retell at some other point, but this video has gone on for far too long. But yes, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and thank you for existing. Take care. Bye-bye.